All right, y'all. My name's Jared Atal. I am an audio engineer here in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm working with this church, Zeal Church, on all their audio systems. And today I wanted to take a look at why you might want to use a DAW for your live stream audio versus just running your board mix. And obviously, these have a lot of budget considerations and everything, but I don't think it's really that much of a barrier of entry to get into the DAW world, and I think there's just massive upside on making your stream a lot better. Also, the biggest difference on a board mix or mixing through a board for your live stream and actually doing it in a DAW is the biggest factor is having a dedicated mix engineer. I can't stress this enough. There's really no set it and forget it way that's going to generate the best possible results. I'm not really trying to talk about if it's possible or not. There's definitely things that are possible, and you can do anything based on your budget. We're just talking about trying to elevate and get the best possible result, and having a dedicated engineer is the most important thing you can do, just as far as being able to navigate the changes that are going on and really make sure that your mix is translating. Because a front of house engineer, their job is to make sure that the mix is translating in that room, that it sounds great in that room. That's the only consideration, that it sounds great for everybody that's there. There's no feedback, all the troubleshooting you're doing there, and that's where their focus is going to be. That kind of stuff doesn't really translate well when you're going to a stream mix that people are going to be listening to in isolation or in different rooms and everything else. And a mixing engineer, when they're mixing something, they're really focusing on making sure that it translates in a car, in headphones, through nice speakers, through a Sonos speaker. You know, it's going to sound balanced in every single situation. So a dedicated engineer is the best thing. The second thing is a dedicated engineer in a DAW has a lot more tools. I could sample and compress things harder because I don't have to worry about feedback and everything. So on a board mix, I'm limited to what tools I have available. Of course, there's waves and everything else with that, but in a DAW, I can just get like crazy with my routing to do like parallel processing or anything else like that. The other consideration is your computer needs to be strong enough to do all of those things, but nowadays with these M1 chips, computers are so good, and it's really easy to get a pretty foolproof way to do a broadcast mix. So on this video, I just kind of want to show you the difference between our printed board mix and the stream mix from this weekend, just so you can like hear the difference and tell if this is a road you want to go down. So check this out. Up top is my board mix, and this bottom one is the broadcast print. Now, obviously, there's a pretty big difference here in the waveform. So this, I do have a master chain going on our board print. I do that so that if there's not a dedicated engineer or something, they could just run the board mix through the lobby and things like that, just so they always have signal, because you'd have to have Pro Tools open if not. Now, this is compressing and limiting and everything else, but it's a pretty big difference because I get to monitor it when I'm mixing the live stream. I get to make sure my levels are good and hitting everything exactly the way I want. And this is what a master song looks like. Really, you know, the dynamics are managed and it hits. So just visually, you can see a big difference here. Now, could I cook this master chain on the board mix harder? Absolutely. But it's just such a dynamic thing. It's hard to set, especially if I'm focusing on the front of house mix and everything else like that. So let's take a listen. This is the broadcast mix from this weekend. Great. Now here's the board mix in comparison. That's pretty wild to me. Obviously, the drums hit a lot harder. I've got a lot more focus on Jordan's vocal. The singer on this is Jordan McCullough. That vocal I can really pin forward and just have my imaging. The stereo imaging is just way, way, way better. And again, this is like a lot to do with just having a dedicated engineer on the broadcast mix, because obviously on the board mix, like the guitar is too hot. The vocal isn't loud enough. The drums aren't hitting, and it's just like you would make those adjustments if you were monitoring that. That's just impossible to do a front of house mix and a broadcast mix at the same time. So that's something like I've set up the scene and it's following the faders of the front of house mix, but it's not, and it's going to follow the faders, but all of those adjustments are being made based on what's happening in the room, not what's actually coming out, if that makes sense. So pretty big difference. Just listen to the low end on this pass. Everything is just much more balanced, and I just feel like the space is just much more defined and less separated. And that's something that's like difficult when you're multi-tracking things, meaning I have a microphone on each little drum. The piano is not a live piano, it's a Nord, so that's going direct in. The singers each have their own mics. These are like engineering things that are different, right? So all of that, we call that isolated recording. Multi-track recording is everything is recorded separately and then we blend it. Now, when you're doing a front of house mix in the room, all of those things coming out of the speakers and how the acoustics work, it blends and glues all those things together, so you don't hear it as separated because of how it appears. But in isolation like this, when I'm just spreading it out of these speakers, and I'm obviously in a controlled studio, so I can hear a lot better, but all of those things, I really hear the separation, and it just starts to feel not natural. And those are considerations like on the broadcast mix that I'm doing. I'm trying to make it not feel that way. I don't want it to feel separated. I want it to feel like a band again. I want to capture that energy that the room is getting, but I'm not going to get that from a board mix. Check that out. Just listen to how separated things feel in the front of house mix. Versus the stream mix and how everything is just much more glued together. And like how much harder that hits than this. It's just night and day. It's just worth it. And also, when you have a singer and you have moments that are big and small and big and small, you got to ride the faders, just like the front of house engineer is doing. It just doesn't translate the same from a front of house mix versus a dedicated broadcast engineer. Check this one out. What a friend you have been. So good to me. God, I can't believe how you love me. What a friend. Yeah, and it has nothing to do with the front of house mix being good or bad. I can assure you it sounds great in the room. It's just that's how a board mix translates in this scenario when you're listening to it in isolation like that. Like the room forgives many sins because there's just how acoustics work. All that stuff is like bouncing and mixing with each other, and it's got its own way of forming its energy, and the subs in there, right? Like you're not going to have the bass as hot as you would have it in a broadcast mix because the subs are carrying a ton of energy. So you're not going to crank the bass as hard on your mix because the subs are doing that for you. But in this situation, you know, on a phone, I don't have subs, so I want to make sure that this mix translates on a phone. And that's just through years and years of practice on getting it to translate in my car, and you know, I've got techniques for that, and I talk about that on my channel. You can check out some of those videos. I've got a little like a small Sony kitchen radio over here that I'll be checking my mix on, and that really helps me with my vocal balances and stuff. But also going from this like low moment to the bigger moment, and the kind of adjustments you have to make. So check this out, like when it's the balances when it's in a softer section. What a friend you have been, so good to me. God, I can't believe how you love me. What a friend, so good to me. God, I can't believe how you love me. And it like the musicians are playing harder as that grows, but it doesn't like translate the same on the front of house print as it does in when I'm riding the faders. And we're riding the faders live as well. It just, like I said, it just translates different. It just feels different. And there's a lot of techniques to help it feel the same way when it's coming out of isolated speakers versus a room. And then I wanted to show you this too. Something that we started doing is for our social media print, that's why I'm like printing these a lot, just like my broadcast mix, so that we can do like shorts or like on our stories, we can post our on our social media. And the sound, they were doing it just like the camera audio in the room, but obviously me being an audio nerd, I'd love it to sound better than that. So, but what we like is the vibe of it sounding like you're in the room a little bit more like. And so what I started to do is I was like, okay, I can just try replicating that. So we have a really nice vocal still, and then I can just kind of give it the vibe. So then what I do is I just put some room verb on it to like inject some of that in the roomness again. And this is like stuff, the print we use for our online, or I'm sorry, for our like Instagram posts. And that just gives it a little bit more of a vibe. It's just something we developed for doing that. And it's kind of cool, you know, it helps it be a little more special based on where you're consuming it, you know, and that just sounds great coming through Instagram like that. So here's the difference between like my broadcast print and with a little bit more room on it. Yeah, just a fun thing we do for our socials, and let me know in the comments if you think it's worth upgrading to a DAW mix for your live broadcast stream, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.